A boy was left at a hospital with no name, no note, and no one waiting for him. He didn't cry. He just watched everyone like he already understood the world had no place for him. The nurses called him Malik. And for 2 years he moved from foster home to foster home, forgotten, broken, invisible. Until a quiet widow named Margaret Reeves saw something everyone else ignored. She wasn't rich. She wasn't young. But she knew what it felt like to lose a family. Her husband had died in an industrial accident, working for a company that never said sorry. She took Malik in not because she had space, but because she had love left to give. He didn't speak for weeks. But when he finally called her mom, she wept. Years passed. Malik grew up curious, brilliant, and always watching. He noticed things most kids didn't. How Margaret skipped meals so he could eat. How she worked 2 jobs and still had time to help with homework. How her hands were always shaking but she never stopped holding him tight. One night he found her crying quietly over a shoebox. Inside were old letters, a rusted wedding ring, and a yellowed photo of a man smiling in a hard hat, Margaret's husband. Malik asked what happened to him. She hesitated, then told him the truth. His name was Thomas Reeves. He was a safety inspector at Draytech Manufacturing. He reported a gas leak in one of the old tunnels. They told him to ignore it. He didn't. 3 days later, the facility exploded. He was one of 12 workers killed. Draytech denied everything. No lawsuit. No apology. Just silence. And ever since then, she never trusted power again. That story lit something in Malik. A fire. He grew up and got a scholarship. Studied engineering. And when he graduated, he launched his own company, a tech firm specializing in infrastructure safety. For years, Margaret insisted he stop spoiling her. But one day he brought her to a quiet suburban street, stopped in front of a glass mansion with a rose garden, and handed her the keys. She didn't understand. He smiled. "You saved me. This is just me finally getting the chance to save you back." The story should have ended there. But it didn't. Because the night of the housewarming gala, while cameras flashed and guests drank champagne, a man stood in the shadows, watching. He wasn't invited. And when Margaret saw his face, she froze. Her wineglass shattered on the ground. She whispered one name, Vance. Gerald Vance was the former CEO of Draytech. The man who signed off on the safety override that killed her husband. He'd never been charged. The company had buried the story. But now he was here. And that could only mean one thing. Someone had found out the truth. That night, Margaret collapsed in the hallway. A seizure. She survived, but barely. And when Malik searched her room, he found a box she'd hidden for decades. Newspaper clippings. Employee memos. A whistleblower complaint Thomas had written, never mailed. It was dated 2 days before the explosion. Malik knew what he had to do. He contacted Dana Cho, a former federal agent turned investigator. Together with his hacker friend Rowan, they began tracing old records. What they found was a buried internal report, doctored timestamps, erased safety violations, and a signature. Gerald Vance's. Malik filed a formal inquiry. The press picked it up. Suddenly, old wounds opened in public. Vance went on television, smirking, calling it a tragic but distant memory. But the pressure mounted. More victims' families came forward. A secret recording surfaced, an old voicemail from Thomas the day before he died. "They're overriding the failsafe. I don't think I'll be home tonight. But I need you to know, I love you." The world heard it. Vance was arrested. But then, Malik was kidnapped. Taken from a parking garage by masked men and dumped in a warehouse. And when the blindfold came off, Gerald Vance stood before him. Calm. Untouchable. "You think this ends with me? I was the puppet. The real architects. You haven't even seen their shadows." But just as Vance raised his hand, the walls burst open. Dana and Rowan had tracked Malik's phone. SWAT stormed the building. Vance was arrested again, this time for conspiracy, kidnapping, and obstruction. Malik returned home. But something still gnawed at him. A face from the gala. A man in the background with a scar, familiar. He searched old photos Margaret kept. One name matched, L. Ford. A former electrical supervisor at Draytech. Disappeared after the explosion. Dana traced him to Seattle, now operating under the name Elliot Langston. Malik confronted him in his office. Langston cracked. "It wasn't just negligence. Vance paid me to disable the system. Your father tried to stop us. He died because I obeyed." Langston handed over a flash drive. Schematics. Memos. A recorded threat from Vance himself. Enough to reopen the case, and expose the web of corruption still operating through offshore shell companies. But at the old factory site, Margaret and Malik discovered something even stranger, a hidden lockbox. Inside, Thomas's final journal. Letters, photos, documents he never got to send. And a cassette labeled, "If I don't make it back." Justice moved swiftly. More executives were indicted. A senator resigned. Malik stood at the center of a national reckoning. But then Dana called. "There's something else. One of the offshore accounts, it's tied to your birth mother." Malik froze. His birth mother? She was alive. Her name was Cassandra Wynne. She'd worked at Draytech. And records showed she was paid off just before Malik was abandoned. Dana traced her to a cabin in Montana. Malik drove there in a snowstorm. When Cassandra opened the door, she whispered, "Malik?" Inside she explained everything. She'd uncovered corruption inside Draytech years ago. But when she threatened to report it, Vance gave her a choice: take the money and disappear or lose her son forever. She ran. And she left Malik behind. Not because she didn't love him, but because she was afraid. "I thought I was protecting you." Malik didn't cry. He didn't scream. He simply said, "You weren't there." She was. And he pulled out a photo of Margaret. But then Cassandra revealed something else: Victor Wynne, Malik's biological father. A former federal prosecutor who died in a suspicious car accident. Except he didn't die. He went underground after discovering Draytech's crimes. And he'd left behind a journal and a tape. On the tape Victor said, "Son, I've watched you your whole life. I'm sorry I wasn't there. But I need you to finish what I started." The journal contained names, offshore accounts, bribes tied to new political candidates. Malik realized the corruption hadn't died. It had simply evolved. He brought everything to the DOJ. Another storm hit the headlines. But this time he didn't go alone. Cassandra testified. Rowan traced the shell companies. Dana coordinated raids. And Margaret watched it unfold with quiet, tearful pride. Malik launched the Reeves Foundation, a place for foster youth, whistleblowers, and those discarded by the system. He stood at a podium and said, "This isn't revenge. This is restoration." But peace didn't last. One night, as Malik worked late in his office, a drone slipped through the window. A laser cracked the glass. Rowan shouted in his earpiece, "Malik, move!" Seconds later, the building exploded. Malik survived. Barely. And from the smoke, a new name emerged: Ronan Kane. The true architect behind Draytech. A man even Vance had feared. Dana tracked him to a black site in the Mojave Desert. Malik, Dana, and Rowan infiltrated the compound. Inside the control room, Kane stood waiting. "Come." Confident. "You exposed the pawns. But you'll never take the king." Malik held up Margaret's cane, still recording, still live streaming. Margaret's voice came through the speaker. "You tried to erase us. But you forgot, we raised a survivor." Kane was arrested. The final hard drive seized. The empire crumbled for good. 6 months later, Malik opened the Margaret Reeves Center. A sanctuary. A legacy. Margaret sat beside Cassandra. They held hands. The past forgiven, the future earned. As Malik cut the ribbon, a young foster boy stepped out of a social worker's car. Scared. Alone. Malik knelt down. "Hey, I'm Malik. Welcome home." Because the boy once discarded, became the man who made sure no one else ever would be. The empire tried to break him. But all they did was build him into their reckoning. And sometimes, the strongest family is the one that chooses you. Life lesson from this story: never underestimate the power of kindness, especially from someone the world overlooks. Sometimes the quietest hands lift us from the darkest places. And when we rise, we don't rise alone. We rise carrying every soul who believed in us when no one else would. Are you thrilled with our storyline? Subscribe to Crime Files Uncovered for more exciting stories.